methylation, right? There's two forms, there's hydroxylation and methylation. With hydroxylation, that causes all the harmful forms of estrogen. And it's down to an enzyme called aromatase. Now, I don't want to get too deep because I'm going to lose people, but this is the stuff for you all to look up so you understand. So methylation actually utilizes estrogen in a positive way. Hydroxylation, which is an addition of an oxygen and hydrogen molecules, causes the issue. So estrogen dominance, we're surrounded by estrogen. It's a crazy situation.
Dr. Amsu, do you want to tell them where it comes from? Through stress, diet, and pollutants.
Right, pollutants through certain foods. And this is the thing, is that the contraceptive pill, the birth control pill, that's the biggest setup, and it should be a crime for what OBGYNs are doing to especially young black girls. Because young black girls, they may have spotting in their cycle, and they'll say, "Oh, we want to regulate your cycle." They do it whether you're
you can
overbleeding.
even take pills to not get your period at all.
Right. There you go. So for everything hormonal with black girls, especially, they're saying take the contraceptive pill, take the birth control pill. They know that the birth control pill is estrogen or progestin, and they cause endometriosis, they cause fibroids, they cause PCOS. And what they do when a girl goes to see a doctor or OBGYN, they say, "Oh, you only got a few fibroids. We're gonna monitor them. Don't worry about it. You know, we're just gonna keep an eye on it for now." When they go back, now they're like 8 centimeters. Now there's like 40, 50 of them. Then they say, "All right, you need a hysterectomy because it's gonna cause problems," and it's a big setup. So.
And I think a key thing here is it's a $1 billion business.
Right.
It is. You're talking about, let's track it, from the birth control pills, which in her case, they started her at 16 years old, okay? And it masked the symptoms because now she wasn't getting the triggers that her body was telling her it was becoming estrogen dominant, because it was covering up the acne and it was covering up the cramping, heavy cramping. So you're taking the birth control pills all that time. Then now your body, when she was off, she found out her body was developing fibroids to the point where she had a 16-centimeter fibroid, which is large, outside of the uterus, and then one inside and some others, which were now causing infertility. So guess what? Infertility, they want to push you to advanced reproductive technologies like IVF, cha-ching, okay, which is more estrogen treatments, all right? And then in between that, like in my case, right, I had 10 surgeries, 5 of them were for fibroids because the fibroids keep coming back.
So what do you suggest for women that have fibroids?
Well, very first thing is become educated. And like I said,
So, I ain't gonna be before you long. I'm lying. No, but I know I ain't supposed to talk about this stuff because I'm a man. Men ain't supposed to talk about this, despite the fact that, you know, women can use their platforms on HBO to talk about toxic masculinity and redefine the masculinity and manhood and all these things. But that's not the point of this conversation. A couple months ago, Breakfast Club did this interview with these 3 black doctors. I guess they're like hip hop doctors, something like that. I think the one dude might be black, a black Brit. I think the other 2 are black Americans. I don't know. But 2 dudes and a female, they came on the show and they were discussing, you know, the effects of birth control. They even had like a test subject, someone who got healed by doing their little methods and whatnot to, you know, get her fertility issues under check. And they were dropping gems and real stuff that's kind of common sense. And, you know, the Nation of Islam has been saying, and I guess this is what information for brothers, leave that weed alone. Especially all the synthetic shit y'all smoking is like, it's not the shit that your grandparents are smoking. It's not. It's too tainted with bullshit, right? Lowering your sperm count and putting all that estrogen in you by smoking it, like, chill, bro. But they gave some gems like that, and one of the biggest things they were saying is that, you know, it's a scam. It's like an actual Ponzi scheme with black women's health. And it's weird to me because it's like these are things that we say don't get paid attention to, and, you know, we talk about, you know, Serena when she was in the hospital, she talked about how the doctors were about to play her. Even she's rich and wealthy and whatnot, and they weren't about to do this with her. So what do you expect happening to regular sisters who ain't got the bread? They're not telling you the truth about a lot of this poison you're putting in your body. Now, it's funny because, not really, but whenever they talk about the male pill, and I'm like, nah, I wouldn't do it. It's poison. And then women will get back, well, you didn't care about it when we were putting it in our bodies. Like, whoa. Slow down with that protest. That ain't my problem. You could tell your partner or whoever you was with not that you didn't want to use that. You chose to put that poison in your body. a lot of you sisters are choosing to take these things because you don't want periods and things of that nature, and you want to maneuver and stop other things by using these birth control methods. And then 10, 15 years later, or whenever you finally settle down and find your Mrs. Right, you're ready to have a kid, and you can't because you've been putting this bullshit in your body. So no, I wouldn't recommend to men to take the male pill because you don't know the side effects. And for the ones we do know, it's like, why would I want to gain weight and have pimples and shit like that? Like, no, it's not a benefit. Just wrap it up or get a vasectomy. Do what you gotta do. But on that episode though, it was some real gems, and it was a good episode, right? They was telling folks what to do and how to eat and this and that, and how diet, all these things that some of which are preventable to avoid the hysterectomies and the clit cancer and all that. Like, there's some things we can do to stop that. But then they had another video, and this is the issue. So this is the woman who used to be the head of Planned Parenthood. Let's just call her Mrs. Thanos for black folks, right? And she comes on not even a month later. Now, one could say the fact that they had the doctors on and then they had them come on, I think that was kind of strategic. To have these black doctors come on and educate black women and say, yo, chill with the birth control and the Depo-Provera and things of that nature. It's not good for you, my sister. Then a week or so later, they have this white woman who's a former head of Planned Parenthood come tell you, no, shit is safe. Keep taking it. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Y'all Negroes just had the black doctors on. So somebody's going to push back and ask some real questions. And said, DJ Envy did ask, how safe is it? He said, we've heard that it's different for different bodies. Oh, no. It's safe. In fact, she directly recommends Depo-Provera. And you know what Depo-Provera is. We know that it's been outlawed in Israel and the UK. We know that the Israeli government was using it on Ethiopian immigrants. They was making them barren, making them sick, all the other stuff. So think about that. This is your black media. They gave you 2 points of sides, but they didn't really push back. Like, if you had all that information and had that woman on the show talking about how she couldn't have kids, she couldn't conceive, and the doctors told her to do X, Y, Z, and she could, and then y'all on here talking about, would you be a great woman leader and a powerful woman and yada, 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 if... What? This bitch is Thanos to the hood, and y'all celebrate this shit. Meanwhile, Mexicans are making sure their birth rate is up. White folks is pandering, like they tripping, like, damn, we got to start having more babies. We wilding out. But we celebrating these shit, 70% of them in our communities. We taking this poison and giving it to our daughters at 15 and whatnot, and then by the time they're 20-something, they all fucked up because they've been putting this poison in their body for years. But hey, what do I know? I'm a guy. I ain't supposed to talk about this shit. Carry on.
How safe is birth control, the pills? Is it
very safe? Very safe.
Some people say it affects the body differently. It'll stop you in the long run for having kids.
It won't do that, but I do think that's why it's really important that, like, the birth control pill, that's one. It's not always the best method. And so one of the reasons that Planned Parenthood is important is we can tell you every kind of method. And then you might say, actually, I'd rather something other than the pill. In fact, one of the things we just did, I know I say we, and I know I'm gone, but I've only been gone a month, so it's still like, but we did this clinical trial for a self-injectable birth control. It's Depo-Provera, but you basically can take it home, and it's good for 3 months. Now that, for some women, is like, wow. It's really effective, super easy to do. So to me, we have to keep finding methods, because someone will say, I can remember to take a pill every day, and then other women say that is just not gonna that's not gonna work.
I remember being on a pill and forgetting, then you have to double up the next day, and
right,
then
it's hard.
You forget 2 days, and then you're like, forget it, I didn't bring it with me on this trip, and now I have to start all over.
Right.
So it's not an easy
but
thing.
Yes, definitely making sure every woman, every patient knows the medical, complications, if there are any, is important. Right. Yeah.
Whose information you look at, it's disproportionately used on African American women. Who's doing it? Planned Parenthood is one of the big purveyors of it. In addition to that, you have the Population Council, you have the International Federation of Planned Parenthood, you have a lot of persons and groups that have a Malthusian view that there are too many people, and therefore they want to reduce the population. They know this drug is deadly, it's cheap, and it makes huge profits for the parent maker, which is Pfizer.
And USAID is also one of the agencies as well.
For 47 years, it's been an unofficial policy of the USAID Office on Population to use or to send abroad dangerous, unsafe, untested, or unapproved drugs.
And you said that this is being obviously disproportionately affecting minority populations.
Yes.
If they know that it's deadly, why would they be administering it to minority populations? I mean, what is really this all about here?
There are too many non-white people. If you look at a gentleman by the name of Dr. Ravenholt, who was head of the USAID Office on Population from about 1966 until 1979, he was able to first convince President Johnson that it was in the national and commercial interests of the United States that 1/4 of the women in the developing world be sterilized. So there's some sense that if there are too many black or brown people, that somehow their needs will conflict with the capitalistic, imperialistic aims of the United States and its allies.
For years, the Israeli government was forcibly administering birth control to a segment of its minority population, with doctors injecting Ethiopian Jewish women against their will with a contraceptive, Depo-Provera. But it wasn't until this January that a government official finally acknowledged it. One investigative journalist who interviewed 35 Ethiopian immigrants found that they were being intimidated and threatened into taking the shots, while being told that they were merely inoculations. But many speculate it was all part of a deliberate attempt to restrict an expanding minority in the country. You see, over the last 2 decades, Israel's experienced a significant influx of Ethiopian immigrants. There now being close to 130,000 living in the country. And while the government has finally put an end to this inhumane, insane population control tactic, the story has shed a light on a dangerous contraceptive that's now being pushed and administered on women of color all over the world, including right here in the U.S. So here to talk about the use of Depo-Provera and how this is targeting minority populations in both here and abroad, I'm joined now by Randy Short, President and National Spokesperson for the Anti-Depo-Provera Clergy Coalition. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
So Israel allegedly put this to an end. Can you talk about what you know about the health effects, though? Because obviously women were being administered this for years without knowing about them.
Well, the drug was first patented in 1959. By the middle 60s, there were a lot of unethical experimentations done, in particular the Grady Clinic study in Georgia on poor black and poor white women. God knows how many people died. This drug did not get approved until 1993-94, but during that time that was used on women all over. The effects of it are serious: excessive bleeding, osteoporosis, breast cancer, cervical cancer, heart attack, stroke, ectopic pregnancies, excessive weight gain, which can lead to type 1 or 2 diabetes, short or long-term infertility, maternal death. It strips the epithelium, the inner part of the woman's womb, making her more susceptible to all STIs and STDs. Therefore, doubling the chances of getting HIV, AIDS, chlamydia, HPV, gonorrhea, or syphilis. And there are other things that bothers the mental health. One of the things that's come to us, that the group that I work with, the Rebecca Project, is that many women are telling us that they've had mental problems. The FDA in 2004 was so concerned about the dangerous nature of Depo-Provera that they issued a black box warning, which is the most serious warning that can be issued by the FDA about how dangerous this drug is.
And despite this warning, this black box warning, it's still being administered under multiple agencies to multiple countries around the world.
Yes.
Who is administering it? Why? And where?
Well, it's being used primarily in non-white countries. So Muslim countries, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Burma, possibly on the Myanmar minority, all over Africa, Central America, and Latin America. And of course, in the United States, depending on whose information you look at, it's disproportionately used on African American women. Who's doing it? Planned Parenthood is one of the big purveyors of it. In addition to that, you have the Population Council, you have the International Federation of Planned Parenthood, you have a lot of persons and groups that have a Malthusian view that there are too many people, and therefore they want to reduce the population. They know this drug is deadly, it's cheap, and it makes huge profits for the parent maker, which is Pfizer.
And USAID is also one of the agencies as well.
For 47 years, it's been an unofficial policy of the USAID Office on Population to use or to send abroad dangerous, unsafe, untested, or unapproved drugs. And
you said that this is being obviously disproportionately affecting minority populations.
Yes.
If they know that it's deadly, why would they be administering it to minority populations? I mean, what is really this all about here?
There are too many non-white people. If you look at a gentleman by the name of Dr. Ravenholt, who was head of the USAID Office on Population from about 1966 until 1979, he was able to first convince President Johnson that it was in the national and commercial interests of the United States that 1/4 of the women in the developing world be sterilized. So there's some sense that if there are too many black or brown people, that somehow their needs will conflict with the capitalistic, imperialistic aims of the United States and its allies.
And there's
people don't want abortion, then that then becomes a form of ideological colonization, as we're beginning to see it more and more.
But say if we talk about contraception, the fact remains that hundreds of millions of women don't have access and should.
Well, you're saying should, but who are you to decide, if you don't mind me saying?
Well,
because the thing is, there isn't a popular demand, ma'am. There isn't a popular demand. If you go to Africa, what people are asking for every day, because I was born in Africa, I was raised in Africa, I continue to go to Africa many times a year. You just speak to any ordinary woman. I think contraception might be like the 10th thing she says, if that.
But it's a basic human right to have access to it. That's when I say that they should have access. It should become available for them if they want it.
When
it should be available.
When there is no food and there is no water, then if there is only a limited amount of aid.
But it is part of that cycle of poverty and dealing with poverty and overcoming poverty, is it not?
Well, that's kind of a Western solution, isn't it? But if the Africans are brought to the table, and the people are asked, the ordinary people, I'm not speaking about some doctor that works for some Western organization that is planted in Africa. If you speak to the ordinary woman on the streets of Africa, what is she asking for? She's asking for food. She's asking for water. She's asking for basic health care. And contraception continues to be like about the last thing that they would ever think of.
But does
now,
that
talking
not,
about contraception,
but does that not play into the wider conversation about poverty and food? If they have access to contraception, if they can deal with birth control, if they can have a family planning program in place, then it deals with the issues of poverty as well.
That is the Western solution. Why don't you listen to the people first? Now, talking about something like contraception, in all this talk about contraception, the one thing that I have never heard of in all my time trying to track all these things is something like the side effects of contraception. No one ever tells the African women when they come to promote contraception across the different African countries. No one talks about it. Now, recently I spoke to some women in Africa who had contraception inserted into them. I think it was something like the IUD and the Implanon, and these women were crying. I found myself consoling women who had actually been experiencing these side effects that they had never heard of before. No one ever told them, but someone from a Western organization, one of these Western organizations in Africa, came and put the IUDs into them and told them, this is what you need to come out of poverty. That is not what African women need. That is not the single indicator to come out of poverty. What Africans need is education.
They do, indeed. It's about education as well, so that they understand their basic human rights. It's not just about the West coming and imposing something.
these are colonial thoughts, so you better be careful expressing them. According to whom? So there are Africans who don't have access to education. What children are looking for is a way to get into school. Someone like myself, I was born in Africa, I was raised in Africa. My lifeline out of poverty was education. It was not contraception. And there are so many other women who have walked the same path as I have without ever having to take recourse to some contraception provided by the British government or the United States government.
So you're you're then also generalizing, speaking on behalf of, you know, every woman on the continent, saying that the majority of them...
So are you? You're talking about a general solution when Africa is actually not a monolithic
all I'm
society.
saying is that they should have the right to have access to.
Well, they do. We have contraception in Africa. As a matter of fact, a lot of the aid money is being actually redirected to provision of things like contraception.
Well, when the United Nations says that more than 200 million women don't have access to it, you know, then that's contradicting what you're saying.
How many of those people? I am not contradicting them. I'm saying these are the calculations by the United Nations. But how many of those 200 million women are actually asking for it? There is a difference between what the United Nations now calls the unmet need and the unmet demand. What the African women are actually dying of.
You know, when we go back to education, perhaps they're unaware.
Well, it's for someone like yourself, you know, someone so kind and generous from the West to come tell them that what they need is contraception to come out of poverty. Now you give them contraception, and the next day they still don't have work. The following year they still don't have work.
I would really love to discuss this further with you. We're just 10 seconds.